The terror zone is when it weeps.
Wait, what? When it weeps?
Yeah, like just
What does
the
that
fluid
mean?
just comes out of your skin.
Like sweats?
Yeah, but it's not.
No. Kaylee, I did not know this.
Yeah. Bro. Welcome back, good turkeys. And hello,
Hey, turkey
Kayla.
tots. Hi.
Ooh, I could go for some tater tots.
Mm-hmm. They're always clutch. Tater tots over fries every day.
This is not how I planned to start this conversation, but do you know what I am making for dinner this week?
Tell me, I'm going to be jealous.
So I'm gonna try to make like chicken breast strips with Captain Crunch as the breading. The
That's
not the fruity tooties, that would be disgusting. The like sweet corn one.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I've done that with frosted flakes. No, corn flakes.
Yeah.
So that would be really good. Ooh.
I'm pretty sure I'm stealing this from, what's the name of a restaurant in Appleton? I think it was on the water.
I vaguely have a memory about your I don't know. I don't know what it's called, but I remember that.
I know, I can't remember what it's called either, but they definitely did that. I don't have a deep fryer and I refuse to deep fry things on the stove because boiling oil
Yeah.
terrifies me and smells in my house. But I'm going to try baking it. Hopefully it works. And then my plan is to make like a maple Dijon dipping sauce.
Oh, my fancy pants. That sounds amazing.
I've been lacking my creative cooking and I needed to get back to it. So that's my Thursday excitement meal. I'm hoping it turns
I
out,
love
but
it.
let me tell you, last week I came home with a box of bagel bites because I just have sort of been craving, like, every once in a while I just want to eat like a trash dinner when Jason's at work, because I'll just like cook him something that was a leftover from one of my freezer meals. And I'll sometimes make myself like boxed macaroni and cheese
I love that.
with
Mm-hmm.
shapes. But
Oh, yes.
I sort of had this craving to get bagel bites, but I came home with them and I tried to sneak them into the freezer and he saw them and he was like, "Are you 8?" So that had already happened last week. And then this week I came home with Captain Crunch and they don't sell anything smaller than like the family size box.
Mm-hmm.
And he was helping me unload the groceries and he was like, "What mental illness are you experiencing?" Because I eat usually like pretty healthy.
Yeah, you do.
And that's some trash. But I was like, listen. It's gonna
Listen,
be
Linda.
really, listen, Linda, listen. It's gonna be so good as breading. And then he got on board. But it was a weird week of 2 weeks of food shit. Anyway,
Love it.
I guess our intro just became me talking about food. But for everyone listening, we have done part 1 and part 2 of Kayla's birth story. So if you haven't listened to those two, I recommend you check them out because this week is basically all the follow-ups that I wanted to ask that I didn't want to interrupt her to ask. And if you've listened to those 2 episodes, you'll know that I still did not interrupt, but I interrupted less.
You did a great job.
Thank you. Also, I very specifically got a beverage that was not carbonated, and yet I'm still burping. So I'm sorry. I actively chose not to drink sparkling water.
You don't have a spritzer this week?
No, I keep feeling like my pants are tight, and then I continuously buy myself treats, and they sell these really good like organic corn nuts at my work.
I'm so glad I'm not listening to you eat those.
Well, obviously, but you would want them if you ate them,
Yeah.
and they're so addicting,
Okay.
and I can't stop eating them, and I can't keep having treats if I'm gonna lose weight.
I feel that.
So last night we had a whole conversation with ourselves about how we are going to not have alcohol on Monday and Tuesday. But I have to have a drink on hump day.
Hey, balance. Speaking of spritzers, I remember last week we were talking about how we feel like it's like the drink of summer, and whether that's the universe determining that or if it's just like groupthink type of thing.
Yeah, if the big wigs up in the metaverse are controlling our day-to-day lives as peasants.
Yeah, yeah. Or if this is, I wanted to follow up on this, or is it collective consciousness? Because literally right after we got done recording, the next day, I was either listening to a podcast, watching something on YouTube, or scrolling on Instagram. I don't remember which one it was, but it was this, I think, professor talking about this experiment that they did with monkeys. And I just
Mm-hmm.
had to share because I thought it was interesting. So they had a group of monkeys on an island. They would drop sweet potatoes in like down for them to eat, and they would eat them, blah blah blah. Then they started dropping them in the sand, and they would get all sandy, so they didn't want to eat them. So they took one monkey, brought him over, taught him how to go down to the water, rinse off the sand, and then be able to eat it. That monkey continued to teach one monkey, then the next monkey, and then they all started learning this. So when the sweet potatoes fell, got sandy, they would all go down to the water, wash it off, and then eat them. So that happened. And so everyone learned, obviously, because they're watching and being taught. But tell me why there was monkeys on a different island in different parts geographically that then were able to do that without any monkeys teaching them or any person teaching them. Isn't that weird? There's other examples too, but I can't remember them off the top of my head. But I just thought it was crazy. Where is it just a mammal, instinctual thing that is being like spread across the consciousness? Or, how did they do that in a totally different area where they weren't being taught?
Were they the same breeds of monkeys?
I believe so.
Do you think we have like a group think based on our species?
Potentially. It's
I
very
really want
fascinating.
to. Or what if time is not linear?
I don't think it is.
Well,
I
I
think
know.
it's what? I know this could be a whole conversation, but
This is a
that is
great example
fascinating.
of why people thought we were stoners in high school. Because for the record, none of us smoked weed today that I'm aware of. But these are the conversations we get into. This is so interesting. I like the group think idea better than thinking that I'm being puppeteered by the 1%.
I mean, that still is a possibility for like consumerism, but I also think it could be collective consciousness.
I really like this.
Yeah.
I was also listening to a podcast. Oh, when was it? They were talking about like the soul stuff again, which we haven't talked about in forever, and which is not a topic for today's discussion, but it's just all that crap. I love hearing all of it. The
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
group consciousness and what's it called? Reincarnation and souls and your soul pods.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, it was Wife of the Party.
Oh,
Shout out
nice.
to Leanne Kreischer. I really liked that episode. It's been weeks ago, but I think it was a hypnotist that she was speaking with. Anyway, it was very interesting. We need to do some more deep dives on that topic because I am
Oh, yeah.
fascinated. But thank you. I like groupthink.
Yeah.
Maybe the group
I
is thinking about refreshing summer beverages.
Everyone's like, let me just get drunk. No, I'm just kidding.
Right? Maybe it's because we've all had a collectively draining last 2 years from COVID, yeah. And the group think needed what's it called? Coping mechanism, albeit slightly unhealthy. It doesn't matter. I like this better. Moving along. So I had a list of questions that I had been typing. I think you said you have some questions from others. So do you want to go first with your other questions, and then I can circle around if there's any they didn't ask?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have too many. Let's see. I think one, let me pull up the list right now. It's been super fun to like hear from other people. I've had like some random people reach out. Not random, but just people that I wouldn't have thought reached out to me and like appreciate me sharing and just giving their own birth stories. It's been so cool just to talk about it. I think it's so
I love that.
emotionally healing. And I don't know, it's just like nice to share with others because it's such a big thing and a lot of people don't talk about it. And so it's been really cool. Okay, so let's see here. So a couple of these are from my cousin. I'll just read through the. She said, "What was most surprising about your birth process that you weren't prepared for or anticipating?" Obviously, wasn't prepared to go to the hospital, but if I take that out of the equation, I wasn't prepared for Pitocin because, again, I wouldn't have been in the hospital setting where I would have needed that, and I was just so unaware of how that would feel,
Mm-hmm.
and I was so scared of it. But going through it now, it's hard. People say you kind of forget what labor feels like and how hard it is. I'm
Yeah.
trying to like latch on to it to remember, but I've already started to, it's kind of fading already. So in my head, I'm like, it's not that bad, but I think it was pretty intense.
Yeah.
But again, I had nothing to compare it to because this is my first birth and my first labor. So
It will be interesting to hear if hopefully you can have a second one and compare.
I know I'm very fascinated by that. Like, how much quicker? Will it be easier? Will I be in less pain, more confident? Yeah, it's going to be interesting. The other
Because
thing I
I
was
had,
surprised about. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to just say, I had a friend that had her first one. So she had nothing to compare it to. And then her first kid ended up having to go to NICU. And I don't think well, she has said, like, she didn't realize how traumatizing that was and how much, like, how scary that was until she had a birth that went smoothly on her second.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's so interesting. I'm hoping for her that it helped her kind of realize why the adjustment into motherhood was so hard, because I'm sure it was compounded by the like trauma of your kid having to be in the NICU and just all of that stuff. But that will be
Mm-hmm.
interesting for you to see if you can have your plans go as what you hope your plans go as, to do a compare and contrast of all of it.
I am hopeful, and that'll be really interesting. Hopefully, one day in the future, we can compare these two. Um, so, yeah, Pitocin and back labor. I touched on that last time. I was not thinking I was going to have any back labor because I thought he was in a good position and no one told me otherwise. But it's funny because I didn't know I was in back labor. And I guess that's the hard thing to articulate is I wasn't prepared for it, but I also just had to get through it. It just felt like your back was literally starting to become numb with pain. That's how it felt. Because my doula was like giving me massages and compresses. After a while, I just told her, you don't really have to do that anymore. It doesn't even feel good because it's just numb with pain and like tense tightness. So that was interesting. It was not anticipating that. Um,
Is back labor supposed to be worse?
it's just different. I think I've heard it's worse. Again, I don't have anything to compare it to, but I'm just thinking if baby's spine is coming down on your spine, it's just a different sensation that's maybe a little bit more intense or sharp compared to the waves of contraction. I don't know.
That makes sense.
So that was that. Is motherhood anything like you imagine it to be? So it's funny because Kenny literally just asked me that yesterday. And I told him yes and no. So, yes, being I feel fulfilled like I thought I would be. I feel like a mother and things are coming naturally. Not like we haven't learned so much. It's a huge learning curve, but as we're learning, I'm confident. Okay, I can do this. I'm good. Like I feel good with him and we're on the right track. But then I told him it doesn't feel like I expected it because I said I didn't know I could love someone this much. And Kenny said, you didn't think, like, you didn't you know how much you were going to love him? I was like, yeah, but I didn't know it was going to feel this intense. It's like getting a new puppy and the puppy love, but like times a million. And I just can't, I just look at him sometimes and I cry because he's just perfect and I love him so much and I'm biased, but there's just, the love is so intense. I didn't realize how intense it would be, which is such a beautiful thing. But it's also, it's heavy, like the motherly, just feeling all the feels.
I
It's
mean, the more
crazy.
you love something, the more you are afraid to lose it.
That's probably what it is.
The opposite side of that. And obviously, the way you love your spouse is not the same, but I don't have a kid, so I can't pretend like I can compare to something else. But I definitely will say that it was interesting as Jason and I have been married. The longer we've been married and the closer we've gotten, the more used to like living my life with him I get. And then the weird, like, the scarier it would seem if he wasn't in it. Because I think my whole life before that, I always felt like I'm independent, I can do my own thing, like I'm fine. It's not that I wouldn't be able to survive, but it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Like the closer we get and the more I depend on him and the more I love him, the scarier the thought of that not being around is. So I cannot imagine what it's like with a human baby that you gave birth to.
And it's only been 2 months.
Do you think that, not that you're going to love him less later, but do you think that the hormones and like some of the bonding stuff is like more intense in the beginning to make sure you bond and like overcome the physical birth trauma?
That's a great question. I don't know scientifically if that's accurate, but I literally just told Kenny today, I think I won't feel as much heavy love, whereas like it's so daunting because I love him so much. I think as he gets older and he's less fragile, he's more independent, I can hopefully let go a little bit, not let go of love, but let go of this overwhelming fear or anxiety about just because he's so perfect. I don't want anything to happen to him. It's so overwhelming. So yeah, I think hopefully when he gets older, I'll love him just as much, but it won't be maybe as stressful on me, but I think I'm gonna be stressed regardless, like forever.
Well, yeah, yeah. I could see how biologically it would make sense that there's a component that while they're the most fragile, you feel the most vigilant.
Yeah.
And maybe the way you protect them changes.
Yeah,
So
that's valid.
interesting. I mean, because right now he is 100% dependent upon you.
Mm-hmm.
That's so
Yeah,
interesting.
I know. It's
So
crazy.
interesting. Okay.
The
Next.
last question that I have from my side is this this potentially could be controversial or not controversial, but I'm going to share it anyway. She asks, she said, you don't have to answer this on the pod, but I'm curious if you gave him the Hep B vaccine. Why or why not? Um, so I'll answer this. Maybe we can cut it out. Maybe we leave it in. Um, so Hep
Wait,
B
wait,
is
wait, wait. Before you answer, when
mhm,
do they normally give it?
literally the day of birth. Like you pop them out and they put them put a shot
Really?
in. There's 2 or 3 doses, and one's the day of birth.
Okay, I didn't know this. I have
Yeah,
feelings, but go ahead. It's not about me.
yeah. So the short answer is no. We did not. We declined the Hep B vaccine because the Hep B is you typically sexually transmitted and or transferred by blood, aka needles or stuff like that. So the likelihood of our 0 day old baby experiencing one of those two things is almost zero. So we decided not to do that. Just because he's so fresh out the womb, you can always get it later in life before they're sexually active, which is our plan, to just delay it until, you can always do it in elementary school. I'm not saying he needs to be sexually active, but just in case, you can delay it to elementary, middle school, high school. But so yes, for those wondering, we declined the Hep B at the doctor. So it's supposed to actually be right at birth. You get one, and then at the 2 month checkup, which we
That's
actually had
crazy to
today.
me.
I know. So we declined it today as well. We're just going to push it off till he's a bit older.
Is there anything else they try to give right away?
They do a vitamin K shot typically. You can either do it orally or a shot. And because he was preemie and because we are planning on, I hope this is not TMI. I'll ask Kenny if I can keep this in here, but we're planning on getting him circumcised. With a procedure like that, they want to make sure he has vitamin K so there's not a blood loss situation.
Oh, yeah.
So we did opt to do that one, the vitamin K shot. That's typically the only other one at birth that they do.
But I mean, that's not a vaccine. That's just a supplement.
It's technically not just vitamin K. There's like adjuvants in there, so it's kind of like a vaccine where
Uh,
it's not just like here's some vitamins. It
uh,
sounds like it, but there's actually like a list of ingredients to it, and it's given like a vaccine. There's no live virus in there, but there's preservatives and adjectives and stuff like that.
okay.
So, yeah, yeah.
When, I don't want to make this all about vaccines, but when do they want to do like the next round of stuff?
2 months.
Like what do they want to give people at that point?
So it's funny because we literally just had our appointment today, so I am very familiar. So they do the DTaP, diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis, like whooping cough, polio, PCV, which is pneumococcal something something something. Don't know the names.
Okay.
Um, Another Hep B round,
Okay.
and what's the last one? A Hib, which is another bacteria thing. So the DTaP is the most important because it's whooping cough. But again, those are the 5 shots that they would typically give at 2 months.
Interesting.
So
I
it's
didn't
like
know
two
any of
months, four
this.
months, 6 months, 12 months,
That's a lot.
2 years. Oh, it's a lot. It's a
I
lot,
didn't know there was
yes.
all of that. I mean, I guess I knew that the schools required vaccines, but I guess my naive brain thought you just went and got a bunch of vaccines before you went to kindergarten.
I
Okay.
think
We
it's
don't.
changed since we were younger.
Oh, that's true too. And I don't remember what I
Yeah.
got. I mean, I just. Interesting. Okay. We don't have to
Yeah. And
focus on
anyway,
this
yeah.
solely. I didn't know that though. This is so
Yeah.
interesting. I feel like these aren't questions you normally ask people because they get freaked out.
Yeah. And again, it all goes back to research. It's just like how I've always said. But, you know, yeah. So,
I just wouldn't know.
mm-hmm.
I wouldn't. I don't know. Plus, you don't go these days walking around asking people vaccine opinions. God,
No, you do
we're gonna
not.
get like blackballed from YouTube, and we haven't even said the C word. Um,
Ah.
I feel like, I don't know what YouTube's rules are on words. I was gonna say I feel like they would let me say one C word over the other C word, but then I was like, I don't actually know if that's true or not. Okay, moving on. It's so interesting. This is not
Mm-hmm.
stuff. I feel like this is the stuff that like moms collectively know, but the dinkwads of the world don't. And I just find all of it so interesting. But again, like I wouldn't just go asking random people because it is private if they don't want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's
And
definitely a personal preference. I don't know. I like sharing, again, what the information I've gained and learned combined with our opinions, and it's our decision. So no one's wrong or incorrect or anything.
mhm,
It's just interesting to learn. I just love learning. That's
I
the bottom
know
line. And
I
then you
do
take that
too.
and you do with what you want. So,
I was talking to my friend Erin the other night, and she hadn't listened to this episode yet, but excuse everyone, my dogs are barking, and it's because my beloved husband is home and he let them out of their kennel room. Um, oh, but she and I were just talking about like I don't think our parents even really considered the fact that they could question a physician or a medical person. And I was telling her about you. I was like, that was just my biggest impression from part two, especially of your birth story, was just you going in and being comfortable, just asking, like, why? Or
mm-hmm.
can you explain that to me? Or no, thank you. I'm not comfortable. I need more information.
Mm-hmm.
And not being intimidated by that. And I think even if people don't agree with your opinions all the time, I think it's worth pointing out that there's still a choice. So, like, you can make whichever choice, but I think a lot of people don't even realize that there's a decision to be made. They just like go
Yeah.
through, which is what I would have done.
Yeah.
Just like go through the motions of just like checking the boxes because you just kind of get like pushed in the momentum of what everybody's
Yeah.
doing. So, I don't know. I think it's worth hearing people having differences of opinion or doing other things, or at least creating space to have questions, which is what we've talked about from the beginning with all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So at least you feel like you had a choice, whichever outcome it was, as long as you're not like wildly endangering someone's life, but
Mm-hmm.
you're not. Coming back to the medical stuff and kids and all those decisions, I think a lot of people just think that they just like get on a ride, or feel like you just get on a ride and it just
Yeah.
takes you, versus realizing you can say, hold up, like, wait, I'm not sure. I'd like some time to think about it,
Mm-hmm.
versus other than situations that we're talking about like acute emergency care where there are life or death decisions that are immediately present. I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people just, even going back to something silly, how you were talking about getting nervous about which food you wanted to order and then
Mm-hmm.
just like quick making a decision. I think it's good for people to realize, like, if you're feeling nervous or you have your gut feels off, like, you can just take a couple breaths. And even if you're too nervous to like ask your physician for a minute, you could just literally pretend you had to go poop, just to give
Mm-hmm.
yourself like space from that room to breathe for a little bit and let your heart rate come back down, and like check in with yourself before you go back and say something.
Yeah. So
Anyway,
true.
I'm proud of you for all of your questioning
Thanks.
and your self armoring with information.
There you go.
Um, okay. I have my question list. If you don't want to answer any of them, just hit next. Or, oh, fuck. Oh my God. Idea. For one episode, do you have that game with the buzzer?
um, I don't know. Maybe.
Your parents must. Do you know which one I'm
Yes, they
talking
will.
about? It's like,
Oh,
it's not
is it just?
categories, gestures. And you
I
can't
think
say the
yeah.
word that's on the card to describe
Uh
it.
huh. Uh huh.
Dude, we
Yeah.
need to get that and then like do just a rapid fire succession of questions, and then you can have that. So if you just don't like my question, you can just beat me and then I'll move on. Okay,
I
sorry.
like it.
I just took everyone on a whole ride. Um, okay. Question number one. You were talking about that bacteria that can be like on your butt or like
GBS.
in your vaginal canal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That they want to give antibiotics for.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have been tested for that prior to his expected birth and you just weren't because he came so much earlier?
Yeah, no, exactly. So GBS is group B strep, and so it's pretty common. A lot of women have it, but it kind of goes and it fluctuates. So if you do have it, they just want to treat it so it doesn't get passed on during birth. So they test at 37 weeks typically.
Okay.
So I was about to get tested at my next midwife appointment. So if I was negative, then I wouldn't have had to have antibiotics. But the ironic thing is, you test 1 week and then you can be positive in 2 weeks when you give birth, or 3 weeks. So it's not like foolproof, I guess. You almost have to test. In the hospital, when I got there, they tested me immediately, but you don't get the results for like 24, 36, 48 hours.
Oh,
So because they didn't have the results immediately, they had to put me on antibiotics anyway.
okay.
So yes, they typically test, I think, 37 weeks ish, and they can redo the test and then decide whether you need antibiotics or not. So
Okay.
I didn't get far enough along to do that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, oh, talking about Pitocin. So if you would have had him at home, let's say if this situation would have happened when you were far enough along to have him at home, if your water
Hmm.
would have broken and you would have hit the 24-hour mark, what do your midwives do?
That's a good question. It would probably be a personal decision again whether I wanted to, or I and Kenny as a family wanted to then transfer to the hospital if things were becoming like a little nerve-wracking for us, or to continuing care at home. Really the biggest thing that, from what I've learned, where we would go to the hospital is if you're seeing meconium in, like, when your water breaks, which is the baby's first poop. because if there's poop in the water and your
There's probably
labor
poop
is
in
not,
their lungs.
or it could get to that point,
Mm.
it's typically a sign of more like distress. And
Uh,
so then we would have gone. That would be a scenario where I would say, hey, let's go to the hospital. But you don't have to typically. I guess it just depends on what the midwives would suggest, and then it would be again up to us.
can they push Pitocin, or can that only be administered by a physician in a hospital?
Yep,
Interesting.
just in the hospital. Yeah. Well,
Interesting.
I think they can't do an IV Pitocin, I don't believe, at home to start labor, but I do believe they can give a Pitocin shot after labor if there is a concern of hemorrhage. They can't stop the bleeding afterwards. You can do Pitocin afterwards. I think they have the ability to do that at home with just a shot to help
Like
stop bleeding.
clamp down your uterus.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Um. Oh, did Kenny have any moments during your labor when he got nervous? Because I don't doubt. I can't imagine that he ever would have doubted you, but just
Mm-hmm.
where like he had moment, because this all like spawned upon you guys when you weren't expecting it, and I imagine like the adrenaline carried through. Did he have any point where the adrenaline like dipped off, where he had was like, "Where am I?" Or did it just like shoot him all the way through the end?
It kind of shot him all the way through the end, but so I asked him this question and he did such a good job like throughout the whole thing. He was the solid foundation that I needed because I was freaking out, just with all the changes. But he said at the end when I mentioned this last week, when the placenta, when I delivered it, he was thinking, "Oh wow, this is way bigger than I thought." Just like I was. It came out and I think we were both like, "Holy crap, this is what it looks like. This is how big it is. It's a whole organ." I think he kind of was freaked out about that a little bit.
That's
But that was
funny.
really the only part.
You guys don't know Kenny, but he's the most like calming, level, like just
Mhm.
middle line person I've ever met, which is not to say that he doesn't have emotions, but he's just, I would describe him as being very stable and very steady. And that for as much as I believed in your ability to have your baby naturally, I believed in his ability to just be like a solid foundation for you. Because
Oh yeah, he keeps me grounded.
he's just so present, and I don't know. He's just there in a good way.
He's the best. Yeah. No, he helped a lot. But yeah, he was really just focused. You got this. Very supportive. But then at the end, I think, once all the craziness is over and our baby's here and it's exciting, and then you're thinking, there's an organ coming out of my wife and it's here and it's just weird. Just weird.
Did you take a picture of it? Did
I
someone?
yes, I have a picture of it. I have a picture of it just like hanging there, not hanging there, but they're holding it from the umbilical cord, and then I have a picture of it in a bag, which that's a dumb picture. You can't really tell what it is because it's in
Oh,
a Ziploc for when they took it.
I guess
So
you couldn't have like a cool like spread out picture because it wasn't floating in water like you imagined.
yeah, and yeah, yeah. There was some things that I wish we could have done with it before they cut it and took it away, but yeah, it's okay.
If you hopefully it won't be the only one you grow. If you're comfortable sharing it on the podcast, I think it would be cool, but if not, I want you to send it to me.
Okay, I got you.
Sorry, losers. Uh,
I'll look at it again. I gotta figure out what's in the background of that picture because
I
I
know
don't
I was gonna
remember.
say, as long as everyone's like clothed, and if we need to like do that new trick you can do with Apple where you can hold something down and cut out,
Oh
you know how to cut out the shape.
yes, just
I mean,
blah.
that might be a little bit aggressive, but I don't know. I don't want to
Oh
put
my
any
gosh.
medical people's faces anywhere that they didn't
Yeah.
consent to be. Um, oh, so I asked you last week if you had a moment where you felt like you became a mother, or if there was like a definitive moment. Did Kenny have any of those?
I asked him that too, and what he told me was not really. He said, I think is growing into it, it's just one of those moments where, I don't know, birth is such a pivotal, transformational moment in time for women. I think men can have that too, but I also think he's just stepping into his fatherhood so
Mhm.
gracefully, but it's just kind of a scale into that. I don't think there was a moment in time where he's like, I'm a father. It's every day. We just, oh my gosh, like we're doing this, we're parents. And I think it's just gradual for him, but he's doing amazing. So there, he said there was no definitive moment.
That makes sense. I mean, you biologically got an oxytocin dump,
Yeah, exactly.
so that tracks. That's interesting.
Hmm.
It had to be weird, like catching him though. Did he talk? Has he talked about that at all?
Yeah, he said it was really cool. He, obviously it's still, I don't know, it's still weird. So he wasn't fully the one delivering and because, like I said, the doctor twisted and pulled, so his hands were kind of just there guiding and then help putting him on my chest. I
Mm-hmm.
think that was really really special for him, but it was just one of those cool moments. It wasn't anything. I don't know.
I mean, they're
He
still
enjoyed doing
gooey.
that.
That just must have
Yeah,
to feel surreal
yeah,
because you've been feeling him inside you for so
uh
long.
huh,
I
yeah.
kind of,
It
I mean, I know you like patted his head around as a reach around, but it's kind of cool that Kenny got to be the first one to like hold him on the outside because he doesn't
yeah.
get to hold him inside him.
Yeah, he said I'm glad I was the first one to touch him besides me wrapping my fingers around and touching his head. So,
I like that.
yeah.
Oh, Kenny. Um, what? Oh, do you have any advice for someone who's currently preggy and nervous about childbirth?
Yes. This was somewhat of an overlap with another question I had gotten. So, I had thought about this because I do think it's really important. And it always goes back to knowledge. For me, when I have more knowledge, I feel more comfortable just in general. And so, I think doing your research so you can be your own advocate and make the best decisions for you, whatever that looks like. Because I was listening to somebody and they said, even if you're healthy and you can give it at birth, but you feel like that's going to cause you to be more stressed, do in the hospital. If the hospital
Mm-hmm.
causes you less stress, do it there. It's just about finding out your options, researching them, making the best decision for you and your family. And that way you feel more equipped to make those decisions. It's just like what we talked about with the you don't know what you don't know, like the glucose test. Instead of drinking that thing, I learned that you could do the monitor in your arm. And that was a way better option for me. So it's just learning and asking questions. And then I really liked watching birth videos. I know some people that freaks people out, but for me, I knew that was going to happen. So like this is inevitable because there's a baby inside me and it has to come out some way. So I need to just kind of prepare myself. And there's so many beautiful birth videos where obviously it's intense, but it's super magical. And not saying birth is always super magical and labor isn't easy, but seeing different birth videos and watching different women handling it differently. Some women are quiet, some women are really loud, some go internally, some need to talk. You just don't know how you're going to be. So seeing a lot of those was really helpful. Just like to get inspiration and also kind of see what I'm potentially, I've got to have something to kind of go on as far as expectation goes because you just don't know. And my last thought would be to visualize your birth or like speak affirmations. I got these really cool birth affirmation cards where it says stuff like my baby is exactly where it needs to be. They're going to come exactly the perfect time. Your body's doing all the work for you, like trust your body, all these things. Basically just affirmations. I would read them during my pregnancy and then I brought them to the hospital and I was reading them throughout labor until I couldn't read anything anymore. And that was helpful because it was reconfirming I can do this and we were made for this and this is not anything that you can't handle. So those would be my suggestions.
I like setting an intention. I like that.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that either. There's a lot of things I've never thought about. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about having kids, but I feel like every woman does at some point. And there's a lot of shit I didn't know that there even was to consider. Um, oh, was there ever any question for you about who would be in the room with you?
No. I knew I only wanted Kenny. Yeah, we're both more private people, I would say, and I just didn't know how I was going to feel this first time. I just wanted to, I'm so comfortable with him, and I didn't want anyone else in the room to make me feel uncomfortable. I mean, you're naked and your body parts are all over the place, and just mentally, too. You just have to be aware of who you want there. So if we were going to do it at home, it was just going to be me, Kenny, and the midwife and the midwife's assistant, and the doula, I guess. So there's 4 people. The hospital is a little different. There's probably a couple more people in there, but I was so out of it and they were in the back of the room I couldn't really see. But as far as family members or friends or anything, it was a hard this first time for sure. It's just gonna be me and Kenny. And I think I would do that the second time too. I don't think we would. I feel more comfortable just being us two.
I always thought that was. I, first of all, never thought anyone would have anyone other than their spouse in the room
A
until
lot
I
of people
like,
have like their mothers
I
and
know.
sisters and
I mean,
yeah.
until I was like a full adult, and then I started watching Sister Wives, and they did a lot of births at home, and it would be like, well, like their mom, and then their
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the word for the other moms. Moms, their other moms. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
Um, or like a sibling, and sometimes it would be like their younger sibling that hadn't had kids yet, which
Mm-hmm.
honestly I think is cool if that's your family culture and probably
Mm-hmm.
how things used to be
Mm-hmm.
before YouTube and places where you could watch that, because you couldn't just
Mm-hmm.
go like watch a birthing video online. So it's kind of, I guess, harkening back to the, what's it called? Not olden times, but just like
Mm-hmm.
teaching. And I guess I kind of admire them for being that open and feeling comfortable doing that and passing that wisdom on to their younger siblings. Like that seems like a cool gift. I can't
Mm-hmm.
ever imagine myself being okay with that. Um, but I find
Yeah,
it so interesting.
that's very interesting. It's a good point because I forgot to mention that I don't know for sure if we would, but I would be open to having Caden around, depending on how old he is. Depending on how old he is, and depending on how I feel, and it probably wouldn't be the whole time, and it wouldn't be the actual, it would be limited, but I think it'd be kind of cool to just get him exposed to that in a nice, peaceful setting, being at home, just so he can hopefully one day be supportive of his future wife giving birth, whether that's at the hospital or at home. If I had a daughter, I would totally even think about that more, about having her there witnessing it, just so she knows what's normal and what's physiological. But having Kate in there, not for sure at all. It's just something that I may think about. But yeah, no offense, mom. I just needed to like be alone. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I just
I
think it's,
wouldn't want
I
to have to think
again,
about other people.
yeah, I can't, again, I didn't know until I was an adult that people ever had anyone other than their spouse.
Hmm.
Very interesting.
And
I
back in
feel
the old
like,
day, they don't even let the spouse in there. They just send them out to the waiting room. We'll get you when the baby's here.
right?
It's a
Well,
whole
old
other
day
thing.
America,
Yeah.
because we've sanitized the shit out of everything. And this is a very random soapbox, but we have sanitized the shit out of death and birth. And I feel like we've gotten back to like a more holistic approach to birth. And I hope that our society comes back around on some of the death stuff, because like death doulas, I'm fascinated by all of it. And having like
Hmm.
a death plan just as in detail as your birth plan. I don't know. I
Mm.
think it's all interesting. We've like tried, it seems like our country has tried to pretend like we ignore how we get here and how we leave,
Hmm.
and like don't want to acknowledge it. And I'm glad we're acknowledging the how we get here part, but I hope we get better at talking about how we leave, and doing that with dignity and honoring people and honoring their wishes and being supportive of all of that. Off my
I like that
soapbox.
soapbox.
Anyway, it's a real set of opinions I have. What else was I going to ask you? Oh, so what does one actually pack in a hospital bag now that you had to pack
I
one?
mean, I still don't feel like I really know very much, but I think what I would have done differently. So, what I brought was a robe. This is like what Google told me. I brought a robe, which I did utilize. Clutch. I brought an outfit with extra socks. Obviously, your cosmetics, like I have contacts, so all those things. People wear or bring slippers, they bring water bottles, they bring like 5 outfits for the baby. We brought the one clean outfit we had. You could bring your own diapers, your own baby, like all the baby stuff that you want.
Okay.
We did not bring literally anything besides maybe a couple diapers and a onesie. I mean, we were so unprepared, but the hospital had all that besides the onesie. So it
Yeah.
really didn't matter. And he was swaddled the whole time in the hospital blanket. So did we need it?
I know
Not
some
really.
people have a whole big thing about like the coming home outfit, which I just realized like you guys weren't planning on coming home. So
Right.
you probably weren't thinking of this whole like flim flam with a coming home outfit.
I know. It's like mom's matching outfit with the baby and like the little sign and the little hat. Nothing against that because I love the pictures, but we had nothing. It was like hospital swaddle, hospital hat. And I'm just like in my robe, in my compression socks that I wore 2 days ago. It's just, I was like a hot mess. But, what else?
Why compression
I mean, you could
socks?
get crazy. My feet were swollen at the end, and
Of
compression.
labor or of um, carrying?
Both?
Like at the
What?
end of your pregnancy, were
Oh,
you wearing compression socks at the end of your pregnancy already?
yes. Sorry.
Okay.
I had just started wearing them and my feet were so swollen that they weren't so swollen, but they were swollen enough where it was getting really uncomfortable. The compression socks helped. And then when I was in the hospital, I think I took them off at one point during labor. Kenny had to pull them off me. It's the whole thing. But I was still pretty swollen for, I would say, 3 to 4 days after giving birth. And then things started to calm down and slightly get back to normal. So I didn't wear them anymore. But I did wear them still about 3 to 4 days after because I was almost more swollen right after giving birth. I remember coming home and him having to put them back on. That was a moment he did not enjoy because it was so hard to get the damn things up because I was swollen, man. I was swollen.
So did they give you anything for that? Like does the midwife recommend that you take something so you pee it out, or it's just your body's going to do what it's going to do?
We didn't even talk about it. I don't know if I didn't bring it up or what, but yeah, I'm sure there was some herbal tincture that they could have recommended, but I didn't do anything.
So interested. I only know
Yeah.
about swelling in the world of like when you should, take a diuretic because you have heart failure. So
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but you're right. Yeah. Oh, sorry, God.
I mean,
Oh.
I'm I'm only used to it in a setting of it being like a negative thing versus with where you were at with pregnancy. I'm assuming it was normal, but I don't know.
I mean, it could get to the point where you have, is it a, is it edema? Is that the word I'm looking for? No.
Edema is swelling. Isn't that just the
Yeah.
general word for swelling? The terror zone is when it weeps.
Wait, what? When it weeps?
Yeah, like
What
just
does
the
that
fluid just
mean?
comes out of your skin.
Like sweats?
Yeah, but it's not.
No. Kaylee, I did not know this.
Yeah, bro, I'm as close to the medical world as I can be as a social worker. Like I tell all of the like nurses and like real medical staff where I work that the only fluids I want to deal with are tears.
Bro,
I mean, I used to
I
deal
did
with
not know that
urine.
was a thing.
Yeah, don't look it up.
There's something, I'm having some major issues on my, I can't think of the word. Preeclampsia. So if your blood pressure is problematic, plus swelling, it could be a sign of preeclampsia, which is what I was trying to avoid. And so you just have to be careful of it. I think normal swelling, there's a normal amount of swelling, and then there's an excessive amount of swelling that you have to be careful of. That's the word I was looking for. But wow, I did not know it weeps. That's disgust. Sorry, I don't mean to be insensitive, but that's really gross.
I mean, it's.
Bodily fluids are.
I feel like it's gross. If you're the person that's experiencing that, it's not that you're gross, but I'm sure that you look down and you're like, oh God. I mean, I don't know, it would freak me out. But when I was a baby social work intern and I was at someone's house for hospice, and my
Oh no.
RIP, but my hospice like intern supervising lady that I shadowed with was wild. And someday I think we should do an episode just of weird intern experiences that I had, not exclusively with them, but I will never forget going into this house and this guy's legs were weeping and I just was like staring at them because he had them out and like wanted us to see, because a lot of people just don't differentiate between a social worker and a nurse, and I'm always like, not the nurse, I'm not the nurse. um, it's a core memory. It was.
That makes me really uncomfortable.
I think if my like placement coordinator had maybe like said something, or I don't know, it's not totally her job because how would she have known in the future that guy was going to do that? But I just didn't know a ton about medical like diagnoses and like end of life processes and
Mm-hmm.
how diseases progress at that point in my
Yeah.
education. And that would have been something I would have liked to have known about before I just saw it in the raw without explanation.
Okay, moving on. I can't talk
Moving
about this
along.
anymore. It's like wounds.
I was just going to say that, but I didn't want to be the one.
No.
I can't. Listen, to all of you nurses out there that deal with fluids and wounds and all of it, I just have so much respect.
Yeah.
Because I just can't even fathom how I don't. Okay, it's fine. I don't know how Jason does what he does, but I also know that if people. Okay, how do I put this? He's as comfortable dealing with blood as I am dealing with tears, and neither of us would switch those scenarios for anything.
That is a good way to put it.
Like,
it's a great way to put
we're
it.
in the right fields. There's nothing wrong with either of those two personality types, but by God, it would be horrid if I ever was a nurse. Okay. So we discussed your barbecue dedication, which my aunt commented on because I called her this weekend and she was listening to that episode and she was like, I can't believe she went to go get the barbecue.
It's funny listening to so many birth stories prior to giving birth. Many women who start labor will do the most crazy things, and you're like, "What?" But I was so in denial. It was just, nope. I'm gonna go get the barbecue, even if I'm gushing water, picking up the food in the restaurant. God,
I mean, it totally makes sense. And like you just up, I don't know, all of it. It totally makes sense. Your brain's probably going a million miles an hour.
Yeah.
I just thought that was so funny. And my aunt commented specifically on that. She was like, I can't believe she went and got barbecue. And I was like, honestly, I can.
Yeah.
But the other thing that she thought was funny is like, when you were talking about not having a hospital bag packed, she said, how does she not think like it was maybe a possibility, like, because you're a pretty big planner. And she said it struck me like you had all of this like research and planning done, and then none of it ever included any other scenario. And then my
Well,
argument was everyone tells first mothers that they're going to go late.
yep.
So
In my head, I had at least 4 weeks, if not 5 weeks, to pack up a hospital bag. I was going to pack one just in case we had a transfer.
Okay.
Because there is a good percentage of first-time moms who plan to give a home birth who just it goes too long and they get tired, and it's not for any medical emergency, but they just choose to go to the hospital. So I knew in the back of my head I need to pack a hospital bag, but I thought I had at least a month, so I hadn't done it yet. That was a problem.
I mean, that's what I figured. And I also figured if there had been any signs like leading up to labor,
Mm-hmm.
you would have gone to the hospital and then had time to do all of that. But this just was like so much
Mm-hmm.
earlier than anyone would have guessed and so randomly unexpected. It's not like you were having crazy Braxton Hicks, or it's
Mm-mm.
not like you were really even having labor pain, right? It was just
No, not at all.
you just stood up and thought you peed your
Mm-hmm.
pants.
Yep.
So funny. But yeah, my aunt was like, it was so striking to me, those two details.
I know. I mean, I'm
uh,
telling you, compartmentalize Kayla over here. I waited. I just put that off.
not today.
Uh,
Um, oh, my other comment, and this is not just from you because I've obviously had other friends that have had kids, and I mean, my head's not so deep in the sand. I don't think that I don't check in on my mom friends, but um, I definitely did not know growing up and into much later into adulthood that breastfeeding is so challenging.
right.
Like, when did you know that until you started your like I knew I want to have a kid research journey?
Yes, I was aware of it logically and anecdotal, anecdotally. I can't ever say that word. I should stop using it,
It's
or I
okay.
should just learn how to say it. Um, yes, some moms breastfeed for 2 years. Some moms don't want to breastfeed at all. Some moms can't produce enough milk. Some moms don't want to. Some moms have a really hard time with pain. And I knew that, but I think naively, because I was planning a home birth and I was doing everything so natural and I wanted to breastfeed, or I should say nurse, so badly, that I was kind of expecting it to be a big learning curve, but I expected it to be feasible. And that has been the most troubling or stressful emotional part of postpartum, because I did plan so much in the beginning. My physical recovery was so great, but the feeding, the nursing was so difficult and is still a thing that we are trying to figure out. That's been the hardest part. And so I knew it was a thing, but I was like, well, it's not going to happen to me, you know.
I just can't believe I can't believe it's not right. I was surprised as I got older and learned that it's hard for like the baby to learn how to do it. Like that's I guess that's what blew my mind is that like
Mhm.
yeah, it makes sense to me that different bodies would produce milk differently or potentially have different like things that way with
Mhm.
difficult whatever or preference,
Mhm.
all of that made sense. I just was so astounded to learn that it's hard for babies to like latch and not just like, oh, we're brand new today and then by day 3 we figured it out. I
Mhm.
don't know. When people said struggles and that it's hard with the latch and all of that, I just had no context of what that actually meant. Oh, you and I still haven't talked about it a ton because I just know you've been in the thick of it and I don't want to be like
Mhm.
digging into your life with a crowbar.
No, I know, and I will always take your questions, but it was something that I've had to process a lot. And I think just as of about a couple weeks ago, I've finally come to, I don't want to say comes to terms because that's a little negative, but we've, I've accepted how I'm feeding my child at this point. He's still getting majority breast milk, but it's coming from me pumping versus nursing. And I think it took me a little bit to mourn that because I really wanted to nurse, but I'm finally accepting of it now, essentially. So that was a lot though, mentally,
Yeah.
because it was just so painful and so disappointing, and it happens every hour to 2 hours, so it's
Mhm.
all consuming, and
Yeah.
that was the hardest part. I mean, it's still hard. I'm pumping, so I'm pumping almost every 2 to 3 hours, and it's just a lot of work, and it's not comfortable.
And a lot of like mental energy to plan and what
Mhm.
time is it and
Mhm.
that
So yeah,
makes
we
sense.
went through a lot, and I know we're already getting a little bit long-winded here, or not long-winded, but we're coming up to an hour. So I'm just to make it short. I mentioned this on my little short thing that you know, gave to you while I was out on maternity leave, and just the whole process of resources was crazy. Like the lactation consultant in the hospital tried to help us latch, just so extremely painful. So we got a lactation consultant outside the hospital. She helped us with position, with, you know, techniques, with, I mean, there's just so many things. But she ended up referring us to a pediatric dentist because he did have a very tight tongue tie. So it's kind of restricting his tongue movement. And he also had a restrictive upper lip. So they essentially did a correction or procedure where they kind of laser that. So, yeah, so there's more movement. That was horrible because we had to do exercises like 5 times a day to keep it from connecting the connective tissue coming back together. Oh, it was so sad because he would cry. So that was a whole thing that did help because he was able to move his tongue, which would be able to do more of a sucking motion instead of just a clamping down motion.
Mm-hmm.
Still not the greatest. So then we've done chiropractic work to kind of help loosen him up and get his nervous system regulated so he can just really be not as tense. That's helped a little bit. And then our last thing we tried was craniosacral therapy, which I don't really know how to explain it, but it's essentially, from my knowledge, it's kind of a combination between massage and chiropractic, where you're focused on the nervous system and it's very light touch, but it's just about, I don't know, she's like a magical lady with her hands. She just knows. She's like, I'm just going to let him tell me where he needs to be, you know, loose and worked on. Okay, I don't know what that means,
Were
but
you like, do me next? Because I would.
yeah.
Hey, lady.
Oh yeah. Touch me. I've got some tension. No, yeah, no, it's really fascinating. So that has also helped slightly, but I think at this point I have a little bit of anxiety around trying to latch because it was so extremely painful that mentally I'm not willing to try so many times a day. But every once in a while we'll do it just for like bonding. But it's still pretty painful of the first 20 seconds, and then you get through it, and then I don't know, it just wasn't what I was expecting, but we're making it work. He is getting chunky and he's getting fed, so that's all I can ask
He is
for. But
such a
it's
chunky
been,
boy.
I know. But it's definitely been a journey, and there's so many different things people try, and people have like night and day experiences. Like once I went to the chiropractor, it was great, no problems. Or once we did the tongue tie revision, it was great, night and day. And then sometimes it's not like that, which is kind of our situation. So
Maybe it was harder too because you didn't have the birth that you imagined. Like, do you think there was you were probably mourning, that was maybe that ball of like mourning and loss? Maybe
mm-hmm.
there was some other stuff in there too.
Yeah, that probably, yeah, definitely. Because I had, yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about it like that.
Like, after you got, not that your birth experience was some like horrid thing, but just like you
Mm-hmm.
let some of that stuff go. But then it was like, okay, well, I can still do this. And then
Yeah.
it was like, gotcha, bitch.
Yeah. No, that's so true. It felt like that. And then the hard part is, okay, I'll just pump, and he's still getting breast milk, so that's great. But the other problem that I'm experiencing, or was more, but I still am sometimes, is either engorgement or just clogged ducts,
Mm.
which, man, that is what I didn't know at all. I am shocked by the amount of times I've gotten a clogged duct and or just pure engorgement, which is not fun. Rock solid, just knots and like pebbles in your boobs. Just, it feels like your boobs are on fire. And if anyone even if my shirt brushes up against it wrong, I'm like, don't touch me. I am in pain. It is
Ugh,
crazy. That's been the hardest part.
that's crazy. Have you like tried to make your production slow down or like ease off of how often, or are you still just kind of pumping every 2 hours and
Increasing the amount of pumping doesn't really slowing down pumping doesn't help that. I think you just have to like pump through it or massage or just, I've taken this tincture now, which is really nice for clogged ducts. But mentally, I have slowed down a little bit with pumping just because every 2 hours is a little brutal. So I do every 3, maybe 4 hours. So at this point, we're supplementing with formula, maybe 1 or 2 feedings a day, and the rest is breast milk. But yeah, mentally, I slowed down a little bit. Maybe it's just a whole thing. I don't even know why. I think people just they're more susceptible to clogged ducts if their tunnels to their ducts are smaller, I guess. I don't know. Everyone's
Makes
anatomy
sense.
is so different.
Yeah.
So that's what the lady was telling me. She said, maybe it's just how you are. So great. Damn it. Shit. But whatever. You never know. With the second kid, maybe their mouth will be perfect and they'll be able to latch and it won't be a problem. It's just, it's a learning curve for mom and baby because they don't know what they're doing either. It's,
Mm-hmm.
you're figuring it out together. And
I think I just always assumed that people figured it out and that the time lapse of the figuring out was less than a week. I don't know where I got that from.
mm-hmm,
It's just
mm-hmm.
one of those things where it's like, what did they do in the olden days? I mean,
I was just gonna say that. What if you can't? Like, what if you have these problems back in the day where you don't have formula? What did you
I
do?
know.
You just get through it, or
I mean, I think like in time, I mean, there's obviously infant mortality rates are not what they
yeah.
are used to be now, but I imagine if we're talking like more communal style living or more community, you borrow
Mm-hmm.
from someone else
That's true. That's so true. They have a village, and people probably
are pregnant at
donated
the same
or
time or
latch on,
yeah,
baby.
yeah. I mean,
Your
I don't
baby,
know.
come and latch on.
I don't know. It's just interesting. I guess it's one of those things, this is a terrible comparison. I'm sorry, but you know how people are like, well, dogs are wild animals, so they can live in the wild.
Uh-huh.
It's like they
Uh-huh.
definitely cannot. Like mine couldn't.
Oh yeah, no. Not
The
some
only
dogs.
surviving they would do is finding another front door. I mean, no hunting skills. So I mean, I guess it's in some ways it's just because it has to happen for survival doesn't mean that it's easy. And I
Mm-hmm.
had just assumed like, oh, it's natural. Just everything natural just works out. It's like that's not
Oh,
really real.
same. Yeah, I was very naive. Very, very naive. So,
So interesting. Well, thank you for
yeah.
sharing.
You're so welcome. It's been crazy, but it's good to, like I said, the last couple episodes, it's good to talk about it and process. And I don't think, there's some people that talk about it, but I've been really open about the journey, and it's helped spark conversations with other people in my life, and it's been nice.
That is cool. I'm glad because the YouTube trolls are not asking me about. Well, none of them have commented on anything related to your birth story because I think even YouTube trolls are smart enough to know better. Mostly they make fun of me, which is fine. But I am glad
Oh
that
my
it's like
God.
sparked conversations because we've talked about that being like what we wanted this to do, and it's been so interesting for me. And like I said, even all of my friends that have had kids that I love and care about, you don't. It's not normal to carve out this length of time to sit down and
Mm-hmm.
talk to somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and it would feel awkward, I think, in any other setting.
Mm-hmm.
And if it were just you and I chatting, like eventually I would have gotten all these details, but I would not have behaved myself as much with my interruptions. And you took so much time to be so intentional about like taking notes and writing down and journaling. I don't know. It's been cool for me. I
Good.
don't know how everyone else feels listening, but I've had fun. Um, Turkeys, we know you're still out there. Um, if you have any follow-ups, always we want to hear them. But we're kind of taking y'all on a journey in an abruptly different direction next week where we discuss different times that we pooped our pants. So if maybe you weren't as interested in some of the birth stuff, which I honestly don't know how you wouldn't be, because all of you got here from some woman's body some way or another. Um, but tune in next week. We'll have an abrupt change of pace and I don't know, get back to something weird, and then we'll do something else. I don't know. I'm sure we're going to be doing like how's mom check-ins for a while. So if anyone's like bothered by that, y'all are going to have to skip ahead for the first 15 minutes or something, because I think it's neat to track the journey and the process and how you're doing and how he's doing and what are like the new challenges at the different stages. But just for our listeners, we're not turning this exclusively into a birth podcast.
Yeah, no, this is the 3 out of 3 final part 3 episode of this. So, but we'll sprinkle in some stuff here and there if you guys, want, or if you have questions, Kaylee. So, yeah, this was fun.
Thank you for your vulnerability and your sharing and your openness and all of those things. And I don't know. Here we go, peoples. On to the next life event, whatever that is. Oh, gosh.
Yeah, whatever that is. Kaylee? No, I'm kidding.
I keep having dreams that we adopt a girl dog, but that would be terrible because I think our 2 boys, it would ruin the ecosystem we've created.
That would be tough.
Honestly, I sometimes wonder if like subconsciously you're talking about like having a kid, if my brain is trying to come up with like a new way to mother something.
What?
Like we've been talking so much about birth and childbirth and like you're becoming a mom. I wonder if like my subconscious is like trying to find an outlet for hormones, like mothering hormones.
I got you.
Like the other day I bought
Let me adopt another dog.
Yeah, basically. Like the other day I came home with yogurt to put in the dog's bowls because Jack doesn't like his dots playing. And Jason was like, the things that you do for these dogs, which is rich because he spoils them way more than I do. But I was like, listen, I'm still a woman and I still have ovaries, and like some form of like nurturing something has to come out somewhere. So it's coming out in probiotics for my dogs.
I love that so much.
And tending to their gut health. Anyway, I love you very much. Everybody, thanks for hanging in there. You look like you're going to say something.
No. We need a better outro. Talk to you later, turkeys. And we'll see you next Tuesday.
That's right, bitches. Okay, love you, bye.
Love you, bye.